So that I'm going to give the floor to Cometan, the second speaker, who is a young and very ambitious philosopher who is kind of reinventing philosophy and spirituality for the spacefaring age. Cometan, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Can you see my screen all right?
Yes, we can.
Thank you very much. So yes, thanks everyone for joining us today. I'm excited to really give you a short introduction really to Astronism. My name's Cometan and I work really to promote this belief system, this religion, this philosophy about space and space exploration throughout the year. And I've been doing this now for about 8 years, since I was about 15 years old. And so really how this all began for me and how I sort of see sort of space exploration is through a very much a philosophical religious lens. I see space as really a source of existential meaning, meaning of life, life purpose. And certainly for me in particular, my life now has become astronism really, and promoting dialogue really regarding space. And again, this began with what I refer to now as astronality. This is an emotion, essentially, any type of emotion that is derived from experience of outer space. So maybe that might be observation, or actually, of course, going into space. We've heard from astronauts who've experienced profound emotions when they've gone into space. Obviously, for the most of us, it's just limited to observation of the night sky, but also rockets as well. When you see a rocket going up into the night sky, I call this, all these types of emotions, whether it's wonder, fear, hope, I call all of these astronality. And that is this sort of experience, really, this emotional experience is at the basis of my entire worldview, the way I see the world. This is the way that I engage with the world, really. And of course, this makes astronism based on an emotion, which is very different from other belief systems. It isn't based on one single event or one single belief, but it's based on sort of the cultivation of these experiences, really, which is what I try to promote, and it's what I try to build my understanding of, essentially. So the American psychologist William E. Kelly has done numerous empirical studies about night sky attachment phenomena, the idea that looking up at the night sky brings about emotions, brings about beliefs about ourselves, sense of identity. I've certainly really intertwine my identity with space. I really identify with that. It's just part of me. We're getting down to these sort of fundamental existential levels when I'm talking about the basis of astronism here. But I suppose what you could say is that like I suppose other religions are based on experiences of God or the divine. Astronism is based on experience of the astronomical world, and of course eventually exploration of that. So the existence of astronality there at the end of this slide here is not contingent on astronism, but astronism certainly is contingent on the existence of astronality. Because what I then began to think about was, well, I must not be the first person who's experienced this type of attachment, this type of emotions with regards to space. And of course I wasn't. And I began to look into deep history, prehistoric times, in fact. And I did this for my master's dissertation last year. And I collected together a series of archaeological specimens, whether that be astromorphic rock art, fossilized items that had like a cosmic theme or an astronomical theme, engravings of constellations, And what I saw is that this is a core part of humanity, that this astronality, that this aspect of the human psyche, you could say, has existed for thousands of years. And what I wanted to build that into really was the theory for an astronic religious tradition. So this is a religious tradition or a philosophical tradition that exists alongside the other main traditions, the Abrahamic, the Dharmic, and the Taoic, that you'd probably be aware of. And thankfully, this type of idea is gaining traction. And of course, with my promotion of Astronism as well, that belongs to this tradition, this astronic tradition, it's giving it context, it's giving it, in a way, legitimacy. You know, I'm not just the first person who's felt these things. I've not just pulled this out of thin air. People have had these experiences for thousands of years, and it's a very core element of the human person. It's a core element of our humanity, you could say. So just to finish this part off, this first section, astronality is a series of emotions. It could be wonder, awe, fear, whatever it may be, but it's all in relation to the astronomical world. And I'm sure we've all felt this from time to time as people certainly interested in space. So at the same time, experience of astronality is the basis of the astronist way of life, and it really influences our philosophy, our beliefs, and our identities as well. My daily life is really integrated with space, not just because I talk about it all the time, but viewing space, actually going out into the back garden and actually viewing space is an important part of my day. Other people might find that strange, but for me, that's completely normal, and I need that in a way. It's that time for me to relax, that time for me to really ponder and think and reflect. So, as I just mentioned, the existence of astronality is core to the human psyche, and I want to really do more empirical studies on this. I want to see how broad experience of astronality is across humanity. Does it vary from place to place? It's likely to do so. Of course, in cities where the night sky isn't as available, isn't as visible, astronality may be felt less, and maybe people in cities will have to focus on viewing a rocket instead, or watching a documentary to sort of get those feelings and understandings and that sense of connection to the astronomical world. So I experienced these things since I was 15 years old. But really, for me, the thing that really pushed my name out there was the fact that I turned this into a belief system. I wrote a few books, and I'm continuing to write books and do lectures like this, speeches like this, and emerged from this has been Astronism, which I don't know where this will go. I don't know how it's going to look when I've passed on in the far future, but I want to create something that people can identify with. I think that's one of the main things that people like about Astronism that I've had feedback from, is that they identify as astronists, and it's nice to feel that connection and that sort of community, really. That's, I'd say, one of the main draws to what I'm doing, my sort of endeavor with this. So one of the main areas that I wanted to really talk about today of Astronism, there's so many areas, by the way, too much to explore in just one presentation, but the area for me to focus on today is the idea of space exploration being the destiny of humanity. Is it really the destiny of humanity? And this is what we call predeterminationism, or just predetermination. Of course, this is the belief, and it's a belief that I hold quite dear to my heart, is that, you know, it is humanity's destiny to explore the stars, to explore the astronomical world. And I believe that this is evidenced by our unique evolution here on the Earth. You know, we are distinguished from other species by our astronality, by our experience and sort of looking up at the night sky. And I really do feel that our purpose as a species is interlinked with outer space. Not only that, but also because of the fact that of the theory of panspermia, if that is true, then that really does link us to outer space. It links us in the sense of that's where our origins are. That is where we come from. So exploring space in every way we can. And of course, as the previous speaker detailed, we are advancing in that area. But I see this as a deeply existential endeavor. Humanity is trying to understand where it's come from, and humanity wants to understand, in a way, its place in this very unbelievably large universe. And so the final bullet point there was just to say that, to expand our species as well beyond the Earth, and to make our species multiplanetary is also an opportunity, really, to reach our highest possible condition as a species. And that's what we'll do, I think, by going into space. So there is a multitude of reasons and justifications for the fact or the belief that it is humanity's destiny to explore space, to become a spacefaring species. And in this sense, I'm talking sort of in a past, present, and future here. I'm talking about these things simultaneously. I've just spoken about prehistoric times, how, our experiences of the night sky in prehistoric times set off this spark within us to explore and understand the world above us. And then, of course, now we are getting involved in sort of deeper space exploration as we're going beyond the moon towards Mars. And then also we have to look at the future as well. And this is kind of what astronism is trying to explore, is sort of the deep future, you could say. Will we come across species that are intelligent or less intelligent or more intelligent than us? These types of endeavors will certainly affect our religions, our philosophies, our understandings of who we are at that really fundamental level. So to put just a full stop on that, I do think that, yes, humanity is destined to explore the stars, and that is certainly a core element of astronist belief. So really, just to get at the fundamentals as well of astronism, is this idea that the astronomical world is the existential source of humanity, that really we gain our purpose. I do anyway. I gain my purpose, my sense of self, my sense of understanding about the world and why we're here from outer space. Other people get it from other sources. Space is my source. And that's how I like to see this. And of course, as I just mentioned, space will provide us with many opportunities, both economic, financial, as the last speaker spoke about, but also existential, philosophical, more abstract benefits to exploring space, which is what I try and focus on and where my specialties lie. So really what we could say about this is that the sort of role of the astronomical world then as humanity's existential source brings about three proclamations, really, three astronist proclamations. Firstly, this is the reason for this is why astronism's worldview is cosmocentric. So we see the world in a way that focuses on outer space. We are cosmocentric religion or cosmocentric philosophy, as distinguished from or contrasted with theocentric, geocentric, and anthropocentric understandings of the world. Secondly, of course, it is for this reason that astronism is based on this idea that humanity will be saved through outer space, that outer space will be our salvation. This is where we're going to get to higher conditions for ourselves. If we don't do this, if we don't explore outer space in the right way, then we will likely just fizzle out and not expand, not become multiplanetary. So we've got choices here, and we need to decide what choices we want to make pretty soon. Of course, there is debates surrounding how close this sort of window of opportunity, is it going to close? Will we not have that opportunity in the future? These are all debates that we love to have in Astronism. I love to debate this with fellow philosophers and people. This is what it's all about. It's about that forum, that debate. And then thirdly, Astronism makes the assertion that approximating oneself to the astronomical world is the highest moral duty, you could say, but also just an existential duty. It's the highest duty of the person, of an astronist person. And this is what we call stellancy. So a person's stellancy, forgive me for all the new terms and everything, we do have our own terminology that you won't have heard of before, but stellancy is essentially a person's proximity to the astronomical world. You know, how often do you think about the astronomical world? Are you engaging with it spiritually, intellectually? Of course, physically is quite difficult. We're limited to sort of observation, of course, for most of us. But things are changing in that area, of course, as well. That's what Astronism is essentially trying to do. It's trying to say that, look, throughout your life, you have an opportunity here to sort of build this sort of connection to the astronomical world. And I know this might sound a little bit fuzzy, sorry, and a little bit wishy-washy, but it really isn't. It is, for me, very concrete. It's something that is just something that I do every day. You know, I love learning about space and all of this, learning about astronomy, engaging with astronomy, just going to stargazing sessions. This is all building up what we call in Astronism our stellancy. And then if we look sort of at the sort of broader understanding and how Astronism sees humanity as a whole. So I've spoken about how as an individual I sort of benefit from outer space and how I want to approximate myself to outer space and learn from outer space. But what about humanity as a whole? Well, we call this process or endeavor transcension. We call it transcension. And this really sort of encompasses space exploration activities, but it sees space exploration as a process of salvation, essentially. It sees space exploration as a journey upwards, but also to transcend as well. So of course, transcension there. And of course, what the goal is here is to unite humanity with the cosmos again. I feel that a lot of people are very disconnected to outer space. They sort of don't see, as the previous speaker was speaking about, Americans where, you know, they've sort of become disconnected to outer space, the general public. They don't see why space is important, whether that be on an economic, financial level or political level, or even on an existential, philosophical, spiritual level. So there really is a disconnect there, and that's what Astronism is trying to link back to. It's trying to sort of re-energize this link between human interest in space and really trying to show why space is important in a philosophical way. Okay. So just to give you sort of a short overview of Astronism as we begin to come to the end of my short presentation here. Yeah, thanks, Giulio. I sort of identified two problems here. There's a survivalistic problem that humanity lives in the closed system of the Earth. It remains monoplanetary, which will lead to our inevitable devolution. That's what's going to happen if we don't do space, to be honest. We will just stay here. And maybe some people are happy with that. Maybe some people don't want to go out into outer space. Maybe they don't see the purpose of it. But what other future do we have if we don't go into outer space, if we stopped all of this tomorrow? So you've got to think about that. We also have an existential one, finding the origins of where we've come from, finding out who we are as a species is very much interconnected to space. So there's two problems there that need to be continuously resolved and attempted to be resolved, and Astronism is trying to do that. Whether it will be Astronism in the end that triumphs as the main belief system, that's for history to decide, but we're just presenting an approach here, you could say, to these problems. My solution is that we need to orient ourselves on cosmocentrism. We need to see the world in a cosmocentric way, change how people think, and then sort of just use as much opportunity as we can to get out into the astronomical world and enrich ourselves intellectually, spiritually, and sort of hopefully engage with astronism as well. And hopefully the outcome there for the individual is that they'll make the most of their existence here on the planet Earth. And then hopefully for humanity as a whole, we will get into outer space and we will discover some of those pending questions that we still cannot fully answer. Hopefully that will be the collective outcome. There is a sort of couple of comparisons here. I'll let you read those quickly, just with Christianity and how Christianity sees humanity and how astronism sees it. But really, astronism just sees making up most of this opportunity. We have this opportunity to go into outer space. Let's do this, but let's do it in the right way. Let's go for the right reasons. Let's go for a mixture of economic reasons, but also this sort of deeper existential reasons as well. I don't want it just to be sort of unbalanced. I want there to be a balance there, and I don't see that in the discourse as much. So that's what I'm trying to promote. Again, here just some comparisons of worldviews and how astronism differs from those. Of course, astronism is different from Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. They are theocentric, we are cosmocentric, and also differs to some degree from humanism as well. So just some concluding slides here. I've got some references and resources that I've used, but there's a heck of a lot more if you're interested in my master's dissertation on astronomy in the origins of religion, if you're interested in the prehistoric stuff and going back into time. Here are some of the specimen that you might be interested in of the astronic tradition. So going back into prehistory, there's so much more specimen than this, but I just wanted to include a few there that you might be interested in. Here are some books that I've authored recently. Most recent was the one on the right, which is the Institutional Dictionary of Astronism. That is quite extensive. Of course, still continuously working on new books all the time, trying to promote astronism and hopefully continue to develop it. My other area, if you was watching earlier, is human rights. That's my other area of interest, and that's what I'm currently doing my PhD on. Specifically religious freedom and how that is restricted around the world. So if you're interested in that area of research, please do take a look at my PhD work. And then finally here, there's just a few links to my website. You've got cometan.org, astronism.com, and then my emails are also down there as well for the various different things that I do. So thank you all for listening. And please send me any questions about joining astronism or becoming an astronist, or really any questions, to be honest, about astronism or space. Thanks, Giulio.
Thank you very much. In the meantime, if you can end your slideshow so we can see all the people here. Does anyone have questions for Cometan? Doesn't seem the case. So I do have a question myself.
Yeah.
You implied, especially in the last part of your talk, that besides philosophical implications, astronism has some kind of spiritual implications that overlap with religion.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to promoting a religion to the majority of people, to the person in the street, I think if you want to gain immediate emotional acceptance, you need to say something about survival after death. In the last slides, you kind of implied something, no, you say that explicitly, something about continued spiritual existence after the end of corporeal life on Earth, and how that links with astronist philosophy. Can you just elaborate on that?
Yes, of course. We are quite divided as a community already on this topic area. Of course, you've got the naturalists on one side, and then you've got what we call the transstellationists. So it's a very long word there. But they, of course, believe, and I sort of shift from one to the other, which I think is natural. I think that's normal to do, especially for someone still so young and new to this area and still learning. But yes, there is a consensus, though, that death is involved with the astronomical world, that there is a connection between the afterlife and the astronomical world, which is, you don't see that in other religions, in the sense of maybe the concept of heaven might be related to that, but typically there is no connection between astronomical world, outer space, and the involvement of that with sort of afterlife or death, really. So there is certainly that in astronism as a fundamental principle, that yes, death is somehow, and the afterlife is certainly somehow involved with the astronomical world, simply because we see, of course, everything through a cosmocentric lens. So for us to say that there is no involvement of the astronomical world in death and the afterlife would be to go against our whole worldview. But of course, these are debates that are continuing, and we try to not lay down too much dogma. This is why I've just said, yes, it's involved, have debates about this, go forth and have debates about this. So my position, I sort of tend to go more towards the naturalist position, the idea that we just have this one life and we need to make the most of it. But again, I love having debates about that. And it's all part of the astronist philosophy, really. It really is. And again, you can, in a way, I could have done a different presentation and made it much more spiritual. I could have included much more spiritual, metaphysical language in there. So I think as well, there's many different astronisms, you could say, as well. So it is still quite fluid, you could say. It is still quite like a philosophy, it is, in that sense, it isn't like a religion where it's sort of dogma and you've got to believe this and that. It is more open. It is a little bit more sort of fluid. Hopefully that answers your question. Maybe it didn't.
Yes, my understanding is that it's still a work in progress, and I most certainly hope to reading your future works on that, maybe next year, maybe in 30 years. Namrata, you have a question.
Yes, great presentation, Cometan. I really enjoyed that. I have a question. So have you looked into the Vedanta philosophy? Because if you look at the Vedanta philosophy, one of the most important focus is a cosmic consciousness. So human beings are seen as integrated with the cosmos, and it's a cycle of life and death. And it's as you mentioned, if you look at the Advaita philosophy, it's about how we are all made of star stuff. And also importantly, human beings are looked at as, because of that, being able to do redemption, concepts of redemption, suffering on their own.
Cometan, you have exactly 1 minute to answer that.
Okay. Yes, I have. And it very much relates to me. It resonates with me. I class that as part of that astronic tradition that I was talking about earlier, this religious tradition that includes everything to do with outer space. So yes, definitely. And I think as well, there is certainly those deep truths there about, yes, us connected to the cosmos in that very deep spiritual, metaphysical way, certainly. And thank you as well for bringing that up, because it is important to have that conversation about our sort of conscious connection to the cosmos as well. But of course, astronism sort of comes from a different perspective, because it has been created by me, who I'm in England right now, so it's a Western sort of understanding of things. But certainly, yeah, resonates with me.